There we go.
Yep, one moment. Okay.
Okay, this is the November 1, 2021 special meeting of the Board of Estimate and Taxation. I'm sorry. Yes, a special meeting of the Board of Estimate and Taxation. Madam Clerk, would you call the roll, please?
Sure. Mr. Abrams,
Here.
Ms. Brown,
Here.
Mr. Camacho,
Here.
Mr. Frere,
Here.
Mr. Jelleret,
Here.
Mr. Kasimis,
Here.
6 present, you have a quorum.
I just want to make a correction. The agenda says that this is a special meeting, but this is actually a regular meeting, isn't it?
It is.
Okay, so this is a regular meeting, the November 1st regular meeting of the Board of Estimate.
Yeah.
Okay, so we have a quorum. First item on the agenda is approval of the minutes of the October 4 meeting.
So moved, Troy.
Troy moves the item. Are there any either comments, additions, deletions to discuss?
Just a slight correction. The comments in the minutes about revenue rounds and barter associated with Oak Hills to my name. Actually, it was Jim Frere who led that conversation, not me.
Okay.
I was going to say that myself. You jumped the gun there.
All right, is there any, okay, is there anything else? All right, hearing none. All in favor of approving the minutes as amended, signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed?
I was not here, so I recuse. I won't vote.
Okay, I'm going to abstain too. I was not here either, so Sherry and I were not here.
I have to abstain as well. I was not there.
Okay, so do we have enough to approve the minutes then?
You have a quorum
Sure.
present, so you're okay.
Okay, so any voting members would suffice.
Who was the last person that just abstained?
Me. Artie.
Got it. Yep, thank you.
All right. So the motion passes. The minutes are approved as amended. There's nothing on the, well, I'm sorry, there is something on the special appropriations. There's nothing on the special appropriations agenda, but there are 2 items on the transfer agenda, section B. And the first item is from contingency management and budgets, the sum of $50,000 for to cover a part-time salary for the new grants coordinator for the rest of the fiscal year. Henry, is Henry with us, or is there someone from management and budget?
Someone who looks like Henry is here.
Okay, I can't see you. Oh, there you are.
I'll move the item.
All right, Mr. Jelleret moves the item.
Yes, thank you. As you may recall, Josh Morgan was handling grant responsibilities, and with his promotion, he's now dealing with communications exclusively. And we decided to make it a part-time position and that it would report to me. So I'm pleased to announce we were very successful in hiring Rita Negri. She has a very interesting background. She has done grants for Yale Hospital. She then went on to CUNY and was doing grants for 3 different colleges there. And then she went to Northwell, which is on Long Island. The 2 major hospitals are Long Island Jewish and North Shore Hospital, and she was the grant manager there. After she commuted from Connecticut to Manhasset, Long Island, after several years, she retired. And she said very specifically, we were a little concerned asking why this person wanted to work with us part-time. And she said she has no interest in full-time, but now that she's retired, she'd like to keep her hand in it. And so she agreed to work with us 19 and a half hours a week, 3 days a week. And what impressed me the most was she said she wasn't just there to file for grants that we've done every year, but to aggressively, proactively talk to all the departments, find out what types of grants they would be interested in. There are databases she can consult with keywords to identify potential grants that line up with our capabilities and interests. And we expect her to generate funds for the city. Unfortunately, in the crush of the budget, Josh and Leisha did not budget anything for this part-time position. So that is why I'm requesting a transfer of $50,000 from contingency to part-time wages in my area to cover these costs.
Are there any questions? No questions? All right, all in favor of the transfer item, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Abstentions? All right, the motion carries and the item is approved.
Thank you.
Thank you, Henry. The next item is there are two transfer items. One, and they both involve the Department of Health. One involves the sum of $1,440 for secretarial services for the Health and Public Safety Committee of the Common Council. I guess services are performed in connection with that. And the second item is to cover relocation assistance provided to, I guess, displaced families in Norwalk. Is there someone here from the Health Department?
And I'll move the item.
Okay, I'm sorry, who moved the item?
Ed.
All right, Ed moved the item. Okay.
Hi,
Hi, Deanna.
how are you? Good evening.
Good
I
evening.
can speak to the item. Well, both of them actually. So the first one is related to, as you said, Telesco to cover meeting minute expenses. So the Health and Public Safety Committee of the Common Council supports multiple departments. It supports the fire department, the police department, the health department, and occasionally DPW with some specific items related to public safety. In the past, the staffing support has switched and been shared by different departments. Last year, the police department was covering for us as we were very busy with the COVID-19 pandemic response. We've retaken over the responsibilities of staffing support in September, but we hadn't put the funds in our budget to cover those meeting minute costs. So we're requesting the funds now to support the meeting minutes for that Common Council committee.
Okay, so this is a committee of the Common Council that the Department of Health meets with.
We
As part
provide
of the
the
common-
staffing. Yeah, we provide the staffing support for that committee, and some of our, grant items go through that committee, just like the police department and fire department. All of their approvals go through this committee before it goes to the full council.
And this is not something that is budgeted for by the Common Council?
No, we had, we've been talking about, in the future, can it be a more centralized location for the, budgeting of this? But as far as I am aware, I don't believe it's budgeted.
And in the past, the cost of these services were borne by the various departments that staffed the particular meeting, or whatever impression.
Yes.
And in those cases, it was typically in their budgets, in those departments' budgets, in those prior instances that you know of?
Yes, that I'm aware of.
Okay. All right. Are there any questions?
I have one question, is that why would it not be budgeted? If it was always a standing item, it was always recurring, why didn't it get budgeted? Is there any reason for that? Was it a misunderstanding somewhere along the line?
I see Donna has her hand up.
Donna, you're on mute.
The city clerk the city clerk's office. Actually, if you read the charter or the ordinance or whatever, first of all, this committee has changed its structure a bit in the past couple of years. This council came in and changed things around a bit. The ordinance said something like the city clerk's office would somehow support this committee. And there was a person in the city clerk's office used to go and do the minutes at night. But this was not anything they got paid for or whatever. Eventually, it was taken over by other departments when the structure changed. And then suddenly we found out from Telesco, I know this is embarrassing, but that the city somehow owed them a lot of money for minutes that were never paid for. And that's because the responsibility for the minutes was put back on the health department. And I think there may have been a time when the health department was paying for this. It's an unusual committee because it doesn't support one department, it supports three. And we had no budget for this. We hadn't budgeted for Telesco services for this committee. So now somebody has to pick it up and put that into their budget. And right now Deanna is doing that, but I think there's probably going to be discussions about the next budget and who's going to pick it up and why. Right now, this is necessary because it's not in our budget. And the city, by the way, the Common Council doesn't have budget for any of this. We have never paid for this in our budget, and we don't pay for committee. So the DPW department pays for their committee minutes. I'm sure every department other than these three under this committee get paid for out of a department budget. So I think it all still has to be ironed out. In the meantime, Deanna's going to bite the bullet and ask for the money. That's the way it is.
All right.
Is this going to be enough money to take us through the end of the year?
It should be for the end for this current fiscal year. We had budgeted 3 hours for 12 meetings.
Okay.
And there's a 3-hour minimum for this service.
All right. Any other questions? All right, all in favor of the item, that particular item, $1,440 to cover the cost of secretarial services, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, abstentions, the motion carries. The next item is the condemnation item. Maybe you can explain that to us a little bit.
Sure. So there's the Uniform Relocation Assistance Act. That's a state law. So municipalities are responsible for covering certain relocation costs. One of those is for if a tenant has to be removed from their housing, they have to, because of code enforcement activities, the city is responsible for paying for those relocation costs. And there's a series of relocation benefits that tenants are eligible for. In Norwalk, the health department has been responsible for administering the relocation program. Prior, when there was a social services department, the social services department was responsible. So this year we've had two unexpected situations, unique situations where two large multifamily homes had to be relocated because they were unsafe for habitation. We coordinated with the building department and the fire department on both of these cases. One of these houses, the tenants, all of them have to find new housing. Some of them have already found it and they're in the process of finding it. The other one, I think all but one are left to be relocated. So these costs, we're already expended our budget, and we need to transfer money so that we can cover the costs, both what we've already incurred, what we're anticipating we're going to be spending in November, and as well as any additional future budget for this year. So it's a unique situation. We've been working very closely with Lamont under his leadership with community services. We have, family navigators, health department staff, as well as some of our partner organizations that are working really hard to find housing for those that remain needing to find housing. we're also communicated to the landlords related to relocation. Landlords are responsible for these costs. So the city pays for them upfront, but we go back to get those costs. So the city gets reimbursed for that. So we've communicated to the landlords, the owners, that they're responsible for these costs and they're going to have to reimburse the city back. In the past, if that has been unsuccessful, we've worked with the law department to put liens on properties. So the costs get, we can gain back some of those costs later on.
And do those liens, get interest? Like, is there interest on those liens, or is it a fixed sum that's the end of it?
I believe it's a fixed amount. I know in the past, the law department has negotiated and come to settlements on some of them, but I'm not aware of interest being incurred in the calculation.
And these two multifamily dwellings, how many families are we talking about?
So in total, we have, I'm just pulling up my notes. We had 15 single adults and 4 families.
And in terms of being paid back by the owners, by the property owners, what's the history of that? Do you have any sense if that actually happens, or if it mostly just ends up being a lien on the property?
Well, I know in the past when we had one really a complicated situation about 4 years ago, one of the landlords was not cooperative, and they put a lien on the property, and the property was up for sale, and we got $18,000 back from that lien. Typically, our costs are very low every year. This is
What
very
happened?
unique.
Yeah, so that's okay. What happens if it's government? Because I think one of those properties, isn't it like a CHAFA funded or something? A subsidized development, one of them, one of the two? I
I
didn't
believe
think.
they're seeking grant funding to cover the costs.
Okay.
Bill, I don't know if you want, this is Bill Mooney, is our Assistant Director of Health. He oversees housing and environmental health and the relocation program.
Hi, all. Yeah, they're looking for applying for a number of grants. Also, they're going through their insurance. So they're expecting to pay upwards of, well, they're anticipating $75,000. So that's what they're shooting for, to try and recover that and then pay back the city.
Are there any fines also associated with these sub-habitable conditions? Is it like a blight thing or something? Is there a fine associated with?
No, no. In the first case, there was some construction work going on where the building was found to be totally unsafe. The outside walls, the brick walls, were literally turning into powder. So it wasn't an issue of neglect outside of just the age of the building. It goes back to 1863, I think, when it was first erected. So it's a matter of just water infiltration, and that it's just an old building.
Got it. Is there anything else?
I just had a question. As far as the collection or the reimbursement that we're going to get hopefully from these landlords, that's not your responsibility. That's the law department's responsibility to handle that.
Yes, we do that in collaboration with them. We give them all the information that they need, and we work with them. Especially with the liens, they definitely they are responsible for that.
Yeah, and so Ed, I would think that the law department would be aware of charging interest on these as soon as they get to an overdue position, wouldn't they?
I mean, typically, you charge interest unless it's built in the statute or the ordinance. Typically, there's interest on a judgment, but I think to place a lien on a property, you don't need that judgment. So I don't know if independent of a judgment, there's a lien, but the law department would know.
Yeah, and once the lien is placed there, they can't sell it. They can't do anything else with it. So it behooves them either, we can move to sell the property, or they have to pay us.
I think so. Yeah. I mean, I don't know what the law is on that, but yeah. Ed?
Okay.
Yeah, one last question in general. Assuming we're not going through a lien and there's not going to be issues from a repayment perspective, do we have any idea of average time frame for repayment? Are we going to recollect these funds inside of this fiscal year? Is this likely to bring us into next fiscal year? I know it goes all back to the general fund, but do we have any sense of timing on the recovery?
That's probably a question for the law department. I would think, wouldn't it?
Yeah,
Again,
I guess
I'm
it-
assuming no
go
lien.
ahead.
I'm assuming just an agreement to repay.
Well, I could just speak to it because once, again, as Deanna pointed out, and now in my role, so we definitely turn over everything to the legal department. But once we turn over, they really take the lead in terms of the process, how aggressive, how they assert it. What is important is that we follow the law, we follow the ordinance, and then transfer the information in terms of all the collection and finances. We don't get involved in that particular aspect.
Okay, thank you, Lamont. I was just
No,
trying to
certainly,
figure out,
yeah.
are we going to see this money this year or next year? So we'll
Yeah.
talk to somebody in the law department to get more clarity.
In regards to the people, so everybody has housing. Did anybody have to get temporary housing, or is everybody they've already found permanent apartments? Do we have to do any people in hotels or anything like that? I think you said there's one family, one person that still needs housing?
in the second home, Bill can tell more of the specifics, but
Sure. We have a number of people still in the hotels. We've got two folks from the house on Leonard Street, which was the larger of the two buildings. There
Right.
was 8 families in there. Two of the folks moved out this weekend. A third will be moving out this coming weekend. There's another 2 rooms that they're kind of a mixture of family, and they actually have a house that they're closing on November 18th. So they'll be moving on that. So there's 2 remaining individuals that we're still working to find a location for. The gentleman from the other house, it was an illegal apartment in the basement, so we couldn't move him back in there. So we're working to find him a place as well. So I'm hoping at least within the next couple of weeks that we can have mostly everyone out with the exception of the folks with the house on the 18th.
So just to be clear, this is to cover the actual cost of relocation, and then the families or the individuals are then responsible for the rent in the new place, albeit temporary place, going forward. Is that the way it works?
Generally speaking, yes, they're going to be responsible for the rent. They're moving to permanent locations. The hotels are kind of the temporary emergency sort of accommodations right now. They'll be moving on to there. We've been able to avoid, which has been good, because we're also responsible for storage and moving fees. Thus far, we haven't had to incur any of that. We might have to with the move to the house, but thus far we've been able to just avoid everything. We've just had to pay for their stays in the hotel because they have no place else to go.
If any are income eligible, were you guys able to work with the housing authority at all? If anybody,
I can speak to that. There's a housing wait list across the country, across the state. So unfortunately, those that would be eligible, although it was an emerging situation in the sense of the health department, our partners deeming the place was inhabitable, it's not an emergency in terms of bumping them up because there's a list that the housing authority must
Has to
abide
go
by.
by.
So
Right.
there's a lot of complexities
Gotcha.
in terms of that emergency doesn't forfeit another emergency to they get into housing, unfortunately.
Okay. Are there any other questions? All right. All in favor of approving the $75,000 transfer from contingency, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? The motion carries, and
Thank
the
you
item
very
is
much,
approved.
Commissioners. Thank you very
Thank
much.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks a lot. So I just wanted to get to Oak Hills by 7 o'clock, and I think we might have accomplished that. I don't think there's anything else on the agenda other than the financial report. So Mike DePalma?
Yep, Mike DePalma, I'm the chairman of the Oak Hills Park Authority. So September was another good month, pretty much in line with what our budget was, pretty much flat. Our revenue was down slightly from what we budgeted, but so were our expenses. So we netted out actually above budget for September. We've now made payments to the city just since July of $37,000. And the audit is being finalized right now. So that final 1% should be around $20,000. Those are the non-revenue generated rounds. So I know there was some questions last time for Joe. I think he, tried to answer them, but do you guys have any questions on that side of the things, the repayment things? I know there's some back and forth about the season passes and stuff.
Yeah, I mean, it's all related, but I
Right.
think there was a question about the barter agreement and what that's all about.
Yeah, so we got information from Paul on that. Right now, there was a couple of things that were bartered, which we have now, just as an aside, when I sat with Joe and Carl and we talked about it, we're not doing any more bartering things because a lot of this stuff was kind of happening without our knowledge, to be honest. Not that anything was like going around sketchy, but what they had was there was a gentleman who was a master carpenter who had a barter with, it started back with Ed. They did some stuff at the golf shop, nothing this past year. There's somebody that did some sheetrock work at the halfway house, which they had some barter agreement. One of the rangers refurbished the first tee bathrooms. And then there was some bartering for signage of the golf course, about $600. So they were all small bartering agreements, but I just think going forward, it doesn't make sense for the small amount of money that we would save to do these types of things. But that's what we just got from the pro on that.
Right, but I mean, $600 at $2 a round. I don't know how many rounds that covers, but that, it's only $2, but it's not.
Well, it would be, so that would be about 20 rounds worth of golf.
Yeah.
So that, I completely agree. But I could just tell you that moving forward, we're not, the only bartering agreement that we will probably maintain, and that's separate. We do have somebody that helps with the controller who has been getting free golf based on that. We're going to look at what that cost is, and Mark, the controller, is going to do an analysis of that. But for the amount of work, this is for the audit, for some of that stuff, it probably still makes sense, but I just still want to see it. So, but other than that, we won't be doing any more bartering going forward.
Quite honestly, I don't see that we should see any bartering going on. But getting to the non-revenue rounds, I guess in the numbers that I'm looking at for the rest of the year, what is, if I'm looking at the right number, I just picked one number out here. I might be looking at the year for, what is it, 3,100 non-revenue rounds?
Yeah, that's just the season
That's
pass.
actual, that's, okay.
Yeah, so they're titled non-revenue rounds, but that's the actual season pass. So we still continue to sell season passes even in through September. Normally, we see a bunch of those in April.
Okay, so the projected on the next page, on page 23, that projected is now 3,500, 3,510. So that's going to be all projected from what you get on the passes. Is that, am I reading that right?
I just want to make sure I'm looking at so this is on page 24. Is that what you said? 25?
23 of 74.
23, sorry. Yeah, so that was just for the month of September. So we had budgeted about $3,500 in non-revenue rounds, which are things like this, and we actually took in 3,510. Yeah,
3,510 is the actual. So, so are you saying that we had 3,500 rounds of golf in September for the passes, against the passes?
No, those aren't the passes. So although that's all lumped into the same thing, this is also just to be a Norwalk resident, you still have to pay the resident fee. So there's that, and that includes the money coming in for the passes, which have all happened up front.
No, I'm talking about the all expenses, the unlimited golf passes that we have out there.
Right. Yep.
We sold what, $75,000 worth?
Oh, I believe it was more than that. I want to say it was upwards of over $100,000.
All right, 75 or 100.
Yep.
Whatever it is. But we're saying that through September, it would have been 3,500. Is that a year-to-date number? No, that's projected for the rest of the year, I guess. I'm not quite sure.
That's the fiscal years. Yeah. So starting in July. Yep.
But just to clarify, that's a revenue number, not a rounds number.
Right. Yeah. Those are dollars.
Those are dollars,
No, I'm looking at non-revenue rounds.
but those
Those
are
are the number
dollars
of rounds.
attributed to non-revenue.
Those are
rounds.
dollars attributable, yeah.
No, it's revenue rounds. It's 18,000 revenue rounds. And then we'd have 3,500 non-revenue rounds. Is that not right?
Oh, yeah, is that, yeah, that doesn't appear to be dollars.
I apologize. Yeah,
rounds.
I was
So
looking at the wrong
my
one.
question is,
Mhm.
3,500 non-revenue rounds would all be attributable to the free pass or the unlimited golf, I should say.
Those would be. I wouldn't see why anything else would fit under that category.
So how much is a round? Let's say average round?
$37 off the top of my head.
That's, yeah, between the member and the non-member, weekends and non-weekend, and all that stuff, it could be about 37. It's like that runs between from 25 up to 50, I guess.
Yeah, right.
So that seems like a lot of rounds, though.
Well, let me just do the math quick because I could tell you if it sounds approximately right. If you just give me one second.
Well, Mike, how many unlimited passes were sold? About 75?
75 was what, yeah, was what it was maxed out at. Yeah.
Between residents and non-residents, right?
Yes.
So 75 players played.
So that's about as an average of 42 rounds per player, which doesn't sound crazy. Because I know some people play many more than that. I know we also have a couple of season pass holders that played under 5 rounds. So that would break down. I mean, I'll confirm that with Mark, but that sounds right, though. If there was 75 people, you break $3,200 into that, it's 42.6 rounds per player.
Is there a reason why, since you know the number of rounds, 3,500, is there a reason why, even though it's a non-revenue round, obviously you've received revenue for those rounds, is there a reason why the city shouldn't be entitled to $2 per each of those rounds?
Yes, you're right. Ed's right. Ed's 100% right. I mean, I thought that's where we were going with this, is that we're owed $2 for that 3,500 rounds.
So based on the way the agreement's written, there's revenue rounds and there's non-revenue rounds. So the way that it's written down, and I get the breakdown of it. So I guess Mark theoretically can go in and look at every one of those members that bought the annual pass. But that was not how it was explained to me. And we went through with Mark and even up to, and I wasn't involved in the actual agreement, but even with Randy, that's how it was interpreted on our end. That there
Does
was
the agreement make reference?
It does, and I could hold on. I'll pull that up.
The agreement makes
The
reference
agreement
to
was written
non-revenue.
before the establishment of the annual.
Exactly.
But I'm just
Right.
wondering if it makes reference to non-revenue rounds in the agreement.
So it says per executed, amended and restated loan agreement, loan payment shall be equal to the aggregate of pay rate multiplied by the number of 9-hole golf revenue rounds plus pay rate multiplied by the number of 18-hole golf revenue rounds for the month immediately preceding the date in which the monthly installment is due. This was from Mark. We had been
So
adhering to this.
is there any
perfectly.
reference to non-revenue rounds in the agreement?
That's the 1%. So you get 1%. So there was still funds provided. You get 1% of the non-revenue rounds.
Well, 1% of the total revenue, isn't it? Isn't that what it is?
Well,
Yeah.
it's all inclusive. This would be included in that.
So there's
Yeah.
no non-revenue, so there's no mention of a non-revenue round in the agreement.
No, it's completely,
But-
they didn't exist back then.
No,
They-
Right, and
because-
at the time the agreement was written, non-revenue rounds were much smaller because you didn't have the annual pass,
Right.
which is $110,000 plus in
Yeah,
revenue,
but
which is why we're talking about should we renegotiate?
there shouldn't be any non-revenue rounds other than the passes that were sold. It should not be barter. They should never have been bartered because that's underestimating what our expenses are. It's reducing what the revenue that we're recovering, that we're supposed to be charging. So the Golf Authority is actually, when paying the 1% of the total revenue, is paying less than what they should have paid, okay? Because you understated revenue, okay? As far as the non-revenue rounds go, that's a separate thing. And there shouldn't be any non-revenue rounds.
Well, I mean,
This is where Ed was bringing up at the very, very beginning, that you shouldn't have non-revenue rounds. You
I'm not
pay
suggesting that
double
there-
around the golf.
I'm not suggesting that there shouldn't be something called non-revenue rounds, because as a practical matter, these are, well, yeah, they are actually revenue rounds, but you may not be charging the same $37 per round, because some people may play more than, some people may play more, some people may play less. But the point is, at 3,500 rounds, at $2 a round, which is what we were entitled to, whatever you call them, that would be close to $7,000, I think, that's owed to the city.
Right. That's absolutely right. And whether it's, what we're talking about is the passes that were the free passes that you bought when you bought the gold card. Basically, if you said they average 42 rounds per year, let's say, or that's what the equivalent cost comes out. Well, I think what happens then is that you just got a discounted rate if you bought that round. So that has nothing to do with the $2 that we're supposed to be charged, because the $2 is on top of all the other greens fees that we have, whether it's a senior, whether it's a non-senior, whether it's a resident, non-resident, whatever it is. It's a round of golf that you pay $2 on. And
I don't disagree. I don't disagree with you guys at all. I think we just have to figure out if we are going to restructure it, what that looks like. We're also
yeah, I mean, it's not a question of restructuring it though, because I mean, there are many ways to sort of, I mean, look, in the agreement, there is no mention of non-revenue rounds. So the fact you've created non-revenue rounds, or something that you call a non-revenue round, even though it does produce revenue, it doesn't, it looks like a duck, quacks like a duck, walks like a duck. It's a duck. It's a revenue round. You may call it a non-revenue round because you're not collecting for that specific round, but you're collecting for some cost, some fee for each round that's played. That's played. The fact that a golfer may get the benefit of that by purchasing an annual ticket, notwithstanding, I think either way, I think it's a great idea that the Oak Hills Authority, came up with these yearly passes, but it does not make them non-revenue rounds.
Right, and I don't disagree with you. So I guess the exercise that we need to do then to try to, and this is just me thinking of, I mean, we'd have to take whatever that $7,000 number is, and then look at what that 1% came in at and deduct that out of there. Am I doing the math right there?
No.
Because then we're paying twice on that.
Two different things. It's two different things. One is the revenue rounds that we get $2 for. And then your total revenue is 1% of total revenue. So it's two different things.
But those upfront payments, the several $1,000s to be a member, to have unlimited rounds, if we're paying $2 and we're paying twice for that, so we're paying the $1,000 for that revenue.
No,
saying it's
because
not a revenue round.
that special deal where you got unlimited golf was revenue. Okay,
right.
That's in your revenue numbers.
Right.
Okay. So your revenue number, what you've been charged, that 1% that you gave us, which was what, $20,000 or something, or you're going to give us?
Yeah.
That's $20,000. Okay, so that's all paid for. You don't have to worry about that. The only thing that we're questioning now, where you will have to come up with additional money, is on the revenue rounds, which is the $2 per round.
But what I'm saying, right? And
it's not going to increase the overall revenue.
But if
Mike, I understand what you're saying, but you're already paying twice, because the revenue number, the 1%, is already 1% of everything.
But our
which
revenue
includes the $2 per round.
But what I'm saying is, if we had not done the season pass, right, and we just did the 3,200 rounds, we would have not had that money up front. So we wouldn't have had that $100 and something thousand.
You may not have had up front, but you may have had it. But you would
have had it. But that's where the $2 a round comes in to make it up, though. So if we're paying the 1% on that $100,000 and we're paying $2 a round, we're getting charged twice for that.
Are you not paying 1% on the overall revenue?
Overall revenue, yeah. I'm just saying we need to back out whatever that was that we got.
No, I don't think so, Mike, because if you're paying 1% on total revenue,
Right.
Total revenue includes the revenue you collect on revenue rounds, the
Mhm.
revenue you collect on annual passes, the revenue you collect for golf lessons, for everything, right?
Arts,
So,
yeah.
so
Arts for
that's
everything.
your total revenue that you're paying 1% of,
Right.
right? That is inclusive today of your revenue rounds number.
Okay.
So in other words, you pay both anyway today.
So we're
So
paying
you're-
both anyway because we're getting the $37. We're paying the 1%. I didn't realize we were paying the 1% on the revenue generated round. So we pay 1% of that $37 plus an additional $2.
You pay
Correct.
1%
Correct?
on
Okay,
your
then-
overall
then I
income.
was,
Well, that's what the
Your overall
agreement was.
Yeah.
Can I make a suggestion? I would just say if this is the end of the season and you're looking at going forward, it's obvious 1% on total revenue is there and it includes everything else. There are just two sources of revenues we get. One is 1% of total revenues.
Mhm.
And then the concept was another fee based on the amount of usage of rounds. So $2 per round sounded good, but now you're selling season passes.
right.
You said the average round is $37. 2 over 37 is about 5%. What I would suggest is when you sell passes, you should pay 5% of the pass revenue and forget about the rounds. You can keep calling them non-revenue rounds, but this way we get $2 for rounds when you sell it by round, and we
Or
get
not.
5% of revenue when you sell passes. And that way the city isn't shortchanged. I think the spirit of the agreement is kept and it makes accounting a little bit easier.
And I'm fine with that. I just want to make it something that is repeatable so that we just define it like you're saying, and that's fine. I just want it to be defined so that next time that, we have that. The other thing is, when we put this into place, obviously we did it to get the golf course open 2 years ago. We kept it in place.
Yeah.
We're going to be re-looking at the program in general and whether, to be honest, we even need to keep it. But either way, I think we just need to define it. I'm fine with it because you're right. All of this was silent in the agreement because it didn't exist. So we just need to be able to define it. And I agree wholeheartedly. I mean, if that's the revenue rounds, then those are the revenue rounds.
And honestly, I think that I think what the city should probably do for this incremental non-revenue rounds, call it a day and say, all right, look, let's not worry about what it was in the past. It was a misunderstanding. Nobody really anticipated the free rounds going to be included. So going forward, we define what the revenue is going to be. Is it going to be $2 on every single round because you have to keep track on every single round that goes through? And it's an easy number to calculate at the end of the month and say $2 times 10,000 rounds. That's the end of it. Okay. And don't even worry. And no difference to Henry. You don't worry about trying to calculate 5%. And that's another fee that you have to just do $2 per round. That's the end of it.
Whatever's easy.
Well, and at the end of the day, I think that you guys have done a fantastic job at the Oak Hills. I mean, a few years ago, we're talking about this time of year, you guys looking at using your line of credit because you were about to go into your minus $200,000 thing. So I think you guys have done a fantastic job, probably in part due to this yearly pass thing. But it seems to me that the city, that particularly because you're doing so well, I think the city has an interest in making sure that it gets what it's entitled to,
of course,
under the agreement. So.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah, I'd like to say also, I think, and I hope I didn't come across trying to give you a hard time, but because I think you guys are doing a phenomenal job now, and it's like between, as Ed said, we go look back 2 years ago, it was on the brink of disaster, and now it's a healthy, ongoing, very, very popular place to go play golf.
I appreciate that. Thank you.
I agree with that. This is Troy. I agree with 100%, Jim. And the course is in great shape. I am one of the unlimited pass holders. I'm very happy with the program. And like I said, the course is great. And 2 years ago, I don't think, the loan wasn't even being repaid. So I'm very happy about the management from the loan payoff perspective. My only question, Mike, to you is, and we've been asking every month is, can you give us an update on the restaurant and where we are?
Yep.
How would you carry?
When I actually come with real dates. So we have.
Get out of here. Stop the madness.
Wednesday, the alarm panel will be replaced. And what'll happen is when they turn that alarm panel on, it'll tell us which ones are not operational, which I was told is a day's worth of work. It doesn't take long to change that over. So Wednesday is the day they'll be in there, maybe a day or two. So once that, we should have nothing, we should be, just get the sign off from the fire marshal, and the goal, I think Carl had mentioned it when he did the finance committee, the goal would be next weekend to have an opening. Provided that but
Next weekend?
yeah, we're hoping to get the restaurant to be open. I mean,
Is it going to be open? Is it going to be open for the winter?
So we're going to figure that out. We want to have it open probably through the holidays. And we're going to figure that out because it's been so long waiting, right? So in the agreement, there's nothing that says that they have to be open, but he does want to be open. So we were going to work that out. So there's nothing defined like he's got to be open from 8 to 5 or, whatever that's going to be. But yeah, we will open when this thing is ready. We're not going to sit and not open it over the off season.
And my only question, Mike, I asked last week, last month, how do you characterize this new partnership relationship with the vendor?
So I think that I do think that the structure of our plan with the GM and a vendor in there makes sense. I think we're obviously, as you could see with some of the struggles we've had with the restaurant, I think there's been some struggles. I think that will be addressed in the off season. But I think that the restaurateur itself, I think once we get the restaurant open, I think it's too early to judge anything about it until the thing opens and we see how it's been going. But I think I'm optimistic that the relationship will be good once we get operational.
Great.
Good luck.
That's excellent. Thank you, Mike. If you have a meeting to go to, I think we're.
Well, I appreciate
any
you.
other questions?
Thanks for your patience, Mike.
Of
Thank
course,
you.
yeah. Anytime. All right. Have a great night.
Thanks, Mike. Is there anything else, year-to-date capital budget report? Anything of note? Henry, or?
I don't think there's anything of note that I note. I'm just trying to prepare for next year's capital budget.
Oh, yes, there you go. And so time is of the essence at this point. Is there a motion to?
Henry, I did have one question. Henry, is there any thing to report on the consultants coming in and doing their evaluation?
Yes, we've had kickoff meeting, which I am very pleased to announce. They are starting with diagnostic meetings with all the chiefs, one-on-one, group meetings with the department heads under the chiefs. To get started, we're looking at scheduling when they will come on site. Much of their work can be done through Zoom by distance, but they do feel it's important to come on site, meet some of the people, walk around. So when they do come on site, they said they don't want to just waste the time on interview questions, but maybe get more in depth, look at the actual facility, see what's going on, being walked around by each of those department heads or chiefs. So we are starting. I originally told them a target date of March 15th because I wanted them to have a report and recommendations before we finish this year's budget cycle. I think it's going to be tough because they're starting now and it was so delayed. And I'd rather, we don't do this often. I'd rather get a quality analysis and report than hurry it by a month or two just to get it within the budget. I'm sure they'll have some preliminary ideas. So yes, the good news is we are starting.
Great, good news.
Great. Anything else?
I move we adjourn.
Oh, there you go. All in favor?
Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
I want
Oh.
to just make the gentleman in the room aware that this may be Sherry's last meeting. Also,
Yes.
she's on the ballot tomorrow.
Yes.
And
Sorry.
we all want to wish her really good luck.
Yeah,
Thank
I
you very
forgot
much.
I'm sorry, I forgot to mention officially, this is, as I think we all know, this is Donna's last meeting. We want to thank her for her marvelous job at these meetings over the years, as well as the Common Council and many other meetings and roles that she's assumed over the last, I think, 8 years. And Sherry, good luck tomorrow.
Thank you.
It's gonna
Well,
be
if I lose, you guys are stuck with me, so.
Well,
We
so
don't
Either
see-
way, Sherry.
So it's kind of a
Either
win-win,
way.
right?
I hope we don't
It's
see
been
you
a
next month.
pleasure.
Been a pleasure working with you, Sherry. Yes.
Thank
With
you,
you,
Donna.
Donna, thank you.
All righty.
Come and have cake. We're gonna have cake one day.
All right.
Ooh, yum,
Great.
yay. Bye,
You
guys.
can bring the wine, Ed. You can bring the
All
wine.
right, we'll do.
Okay.
Well,
All right.
why don't we,
Bye,
Ed,
everybody.
are you going to have our annual holiday festival or holiday party at Oak Hills this year?
Who, me?
Yes.
Well, I think that, isn't that usually after the budget season? So sure, yeah.
We should have it during the
What's the
budget.
deal?
Careful, careful, Ed.
A budget transfer for the holiday festivity?
Yeah.
I'm sorry, what was that?
It's not coming out of contingency.
Right, it's all coming out of contingency. There you go.
All right.
See each other. Happy Thanksgiving.
Yeah, same here.
See you next month. Okay, bye now.
Happy
Wow.
holidays. Thank you.
Bye,
All right, happy
everyone.
holidays.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.